Hello, I'm Andy Sophia Fontaine, editor at Iceland Review. If you've been following this channel long enough or reading our news on our website, you're probably familiar with whale hunting in Iceland. It's a very controversial subject, but recently we've had a scandal blow up in the news involving secret recordings of a government minister's son, quid pro quo, and a possible conflict of interest. We'll get into that and lots more on this episode of Iceland News Review. So what essentially happened was, late last week, a secret recording began circulating among journalists in Iceland that was taken of the son of Jón Gunnarsson. He was a member of parliament for the Independence Party. He used to be Minister of Justice. And the discussion that was had in the secret recording involved whale hunting and the granting of licenses of whaling. Now, this was a very sophisticated operation, it turned out, because the person who made this recording was posing as a wealthy Swiss investor who was interested in investing in real estate here in Iceland. So just to give you a little background, there's only one active whaling company in Iceland right now. They're called Hvalur hf. And that name is probably familiar to you if you've been following our news for a while, because last June of 2023, then Minister of Fisheries, Svandís Svavarsdóttir, she issued a temporary ban on the hunting of whales in Iceland on the day that the whaling season was to begin. And this was a controversial move at the time. She argued that, in her estimation, this company had not fulfilled their obligations to meet the bare minimum requirements for Iceland's animal welfare laws. The parliamentary ombudsman disagreed, saying that this ban was unlawful, and this was in effect throughout the entire summer. And one of the biggest critics of this ban was none other than Jón Gunnarsson. So, fast forward to October 13th, and Prime Minister Bjarni Benediktsson, who is also of the Independence Party, announced that he was breaking up the coalition, meaning that there would be snap elections on November 30th. In the meantime, there is what's known as an interim government. And the purpose of that government is basically to just do all the daily functions of government, not do anything too revolutionary or groundbreaking in this time, because the assumption is that within those 45 days, the interim government should not be trying to do anything too radical, that we should leave that to the voters to decide who should be in the next government and what they want to do. So, as a part of this interim government, Bjarni Benediktsson is not just the prime minister, he is also the minister of fisheries. And on October 25th, he announced that he was bringing on a special advisor, a special representative to the Ministry of Fisheries, who was none other than Jón Gunnarsson. So what came forward exactly in this recording? Well, the person posing as a Swiss investor who was talking to the son of Jón Gunnarsson, whose name is Gunnar Bergman, started bringing up whaling and whale hunting in particular, and how that was going, because Hvalur hf, the whaling company, had submitted a license to continue whale hunting in Iceland. However, there has been considerable pushback against this government making any decision on this matter, because it's considered too big and too controversial for an interim government to decide. And critics have been saying that, we should wait until the next government to see whether or not they're going to decide to issue this license. Bjarni Benediktsson has disagreed. He said he's going to review the application regardless, and that it's pretty much a formality, and it's completely within his powers to do this in his capacity as Minister of Fisheries. Now, before we get into what was actually on the recordings, you should know how Jón Gunnarsson actually got to this particular position. We have Jón Gunnarsson, who is the special advisor or special representative to the Minister of Fisheries. We have Bjarni Benediktsson acting as interim Minister of Fisheries, and we have an application for a whale hunting license from Hvalur hf at the office of the Ministry of Fisheries. So last October 20th, that is 1 week from the time that the Prime Minister had announced that he's breaking up the government, the Independence Party, like every party in this country, had their primaries. And primaries are used to decide who's going to be in what seat in one of Iceland's 6 voting districts. So Jón Gunnarsson was originally running for 2nd seat, but the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Þórdís Kolbrún Reykfjörð Gylfadóttir, it's a very long name, she announced that she was also going to be running for 2nd seat in the same district. And Jón was none too pleased about this, saying that he had no interest in running and what have you. And at some point, that was on October 20th, at some point between October 22nd and October 24th is when this license from Hvalur was submitted to the Ministry of Fisheries. The next day, Jón Gunnarsson announced that he was actually going to be running for 5th seat, and it was also announced that he was going to be this special advisor. So one could probably ask themselves, well, what happened in these few days to have him go from, I'm not running, to, okay, I'll run for a seat where I'm probably not going to get a seat in Parliament, and I'm accepting this job as special representative to the Ministry of Fisheries. Well, Gunnar Bergman, in this secret recording, said that there was a conversation between Bjarni and Jón, wherein Bjarni offered 5th seat instead, and Jón said, and this is a quote from Gunnar, Jón had said, okay, I'm ready to accept 5th seat, but you have to do something for me. And what he was looking forward to doing was being this advisor to the ministry and making sure that this whaling license went through. And so with all this in mind, there being a very public friendship between these two men, and Jón very publicly stating that he wanted to focus on the whaling application, that he was going to examine this especially in his capacity as minister. Everything that Gunnar Bergman was saying, that there was quid pro quo, that Jón agreed to take 5th seat, a seat that pretty much guarantees he will not be a member of Parliament, so long as he gets to make sure that his buddy's whaling license goes through, didn't really come as a surprise to people. And this blew up, as you might imagine. This became a really, really, really big story. But the reaction from these two men, Bjarni and Jón, was such that they focused more on the method that was used to get this recording rather than the contents of the recordings themselves. Jón had responded to Heimildin, who had broke this story with the recording and detailing what was said in it. He responded to this by saying, quote, "The lies contained in your questions are not worthy of an answer, as there is no basis of anything implied. I'm sorry that you and Heimildin have stooped so low as to drag my innocent son into your attempts to hit me politically. I doubt that it is possible to stoop so low under the guise of journalism." Now, as I said, in this conversation between Gunnar and this Swiss investor, Gunnar just basically laid it all out, that yeah, they were going to make this application go through, that this was a part of Jón's deal of becoming special representative, that he'd be allowed to do this, and that has been flat out denied completely. Both Jón and Bjarni have said that there is absolutely no quid pro quo. From older American viewers, the phrase "no quid pro quo" might ring some bells for you. But nonetheless, Bjarni Benediktsson then announced, pretty much the day that this recording broke, that Jón Gunnarsson would have nothing to do with the handling of whaling licenses, despite what was said on the recording and despite what Jón Gunnarsson himself said publicly, that he wanted to specifically focus on this. So if none of this is true, then why would Jón Gunnarsson's son say all these things to a Swiss investor when he thought he was having a private conversation? Well, there was follow-up on this, wherein a reporter named Berghildur Erla Bernhardsdóttir reached out to Gunnar, and he said that he was pretty much just making things up, that he was openly speculating and speaking untruthfully in the hopes of impressing an investor who was expressing an interest in investing in Icelandic real estate. Gunnar works in real estate, and he thought that spinning a tale would entice this man into giving him money. But this does raise some questions. The reason why a lot of Icelanders find this hard to swallow is, first of all, there's a concept in Icelandic society called frændhyggli, It's the Icelandic word for nepotism. And this has been an ongoing part of Icelandic politics for a very long time, in part because we are a small country, and so it's been like a known thing of people appointing their relatives to positions of power. But in this particular case, like exchanging favors is so ingrained in the imaginations of Icelanders of what happens in politics that it was very easy to believe that this is what happened, especially since the sequence of events of, Jon running for second position in a particular district, someone else coming to that district, running for the same seat, and him losing, and then saying, I'm not interested in running. And then suddenly, like a few days later, saying he was running for fifth seat, which is a guaranteed losing seat, and also getting this brand new position of special representative at the Ministry of Fisheries. And during this time, during this interim time, a license application for whale hunting coming to the desk of the Ministry of Fisheries from a very close friend of Jon Gunnarsson, it looks a little suspicious. But to be fair, they have flat out denied all of these allegations, and Gunnar has said, yeah, I was just spinning a tall tale to impress an investor, although that does make you ask, like, why would a real estate investor care about whether or not Iceland is hunting whales? How would that affect a real estate investor's bottom line? No way of knowing. So what will come of this? Well, frankly, probably nothing, because it is pretty much just, one person's word against another's. Like, this Gunnar Bergman had unequivocally said all these things, but he can say, like, I was just making these things up, and Jon Gunnarsson and Bjarni can both say, no, there was absolutely no agreement to exchange favors. It's not like there were emails that we know of or anything like that. The police have said that they're not interested in investigating this matter. And so what is the bottom line here? Well, the bottom line is that what has happened is more relevant to what is going on in the minds of Icelanders than it is in terms of what we have as hard evidence. What we have been told has happened in these recordings sounds very believable to Icelanders, and so it may affect the Independence Party on election day. They're not doing so great in the polls, but if any effect at all has occurred from all this, is that we now have over 100 NGOs and organizations who have implored the president of Iceland to use her power as president to try to keep the whaling license from being approved between now and November 30th. That this is something for the next government to decide. And whether or not that happens remains to be seen, so stay tuned. With this talk of whale hunting, you may be wondering, well, what do Icelanders themselves think of whale hunting? Well, typically the polls will ask one of two types of questions. One is, what do you personally think? Should Iceland be hunting whales? And the other being, do you think that Iceland hunting whales hurts Iceland's image abroad? Because one of the biggest arguments against whale hunting in Iceland that has come up has not just been like the environmental aspects or the animal welfare aspects, but also that it damages our image abroad. So Icelanders are typically polled on this question, as well as what do you think of whaling in general? And there's a new poll that had come out, and 46.3% of respondents said that they do not think that whale hunting hurts or helps Iceland's image abroad. So they don't see it as making any difference, and why would they when tourism numbers have continued to, and why would they when they see tourism numbers continuing to climb and plenty of tourists are coming here all the time? Whale hunting has apparently not damaged people's will to visit the country. On the contrary, you will see restaurants serving whale meat, usually minke whale meat. Minke whales are like relatively small for whales, and they're very plentiful in Icelandic waters. Icelanders, interestingly, very, 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 very few Icelanders actually eat whale meat. These restaurants are marketing whale meat for tourists. And there are some restaurants, though, that will sell fin whale meat. And so it's understandable if like the largest share of Icelanders polled do not believe that whale hunting helps or hurts Iceland's image one way or the other. But of those who do believe that it helps or hurts, the larger proportion believe that it hurts our image abroad. 18.9% said they believe it hurts our image somewhat. 11.7% said they believe it hurts our image a great deal. And 9.9% said they believe that it completely destroys our image abroad. But there are those who think that whale hunting helps Iceland's image, and I think that's really interesting. I would love to talk to these people. Like, if you're one of these people, if you're an Icelander and you believe that whale hunting helps Iceland's image, please reach out to me. I really am genuinely curious to hear how you think whale hunting helps Iceland's image. But they're out there apparently because the largest share of those who think it helps, 5%, said that they think it helps a little bit. 4.7% they think that it helps it entirely. And 3% thinks that whale hunting helps Iceland's image a lot. Again, if you're one of these people, I am genuinely curious to hear what you have to say. Please reach out to me. I want to know how you think Iceland hunting whales helps our image. I can understand thinking it makes no difference. I can understand thinking that it hurts our image, but I have literally never met anyone who thinks it helps us. So please reach out to me. I'm not going to argue with you. I just want to hear what you have to say. Are you like me? If you see somebody behind the wheel of a car driving and they're on their phone, does it fill you with rage and anxiety? Well, this is a practice that happens pretty much anywhere where there's cars. However, the good news is that the people who do this in Iceland have been declining. There is a poll conducted by the insurance company Sjóvá in connection with the Icelandic Transport Authority. It's a self-reporting poll. So these are the people who actually admit to this practice, okay? We're ruling out the people who will not even admit it in an anonymous poll. But the number of people who said that they read or write texts while driving has declined during the years. So 35.8% admitted to reading text while driving, and 27.7% admitted to writing them. And that's a lot. That is a lot. Like, that's more than 1 in 3 and 1 in 4, respectively, saying, yeah, I read or write text on my phone while I'm driving, which is not encouraging in itself. But what is encouraging is that is down from 40.1% and 31.8%, respectively, last year. And that is, it still makes me kind of nervous. Makes me, glad that I don't drive. I mean, I still use public transport, and so may get in an accident with somebody who's doing this whilst driving. But yeah, we could definitely do a lot better. However, it bears mentioning, as department manager for safety and information at the Icelandic Transport Authority, Gunnar Geir Gunnarsson, pointed out that having your phone out while you're driving is not the only distraction that you need to worry about. So you might have noticed that a lot of new cars these days will just have one giant tablet for everything, like the volume of the music, the temperature in the car, and what have you. And that, he pointed out, can be dangerous because, you know, in the old days, cars used to have like buttons and levers and knobs, so it's just very tactile. You can keep your eyes on the road while adjusting the volume or changing the radio station or turning on the heat or whatever on your car. But with these tablets, that's not so hard, that's not so easy to do, is it? And he's pointed out that this can be another danger on the road. So like, try not to, keep your face in the tablet that often as you're driving. Using hands-free is, of course, another great option. It's cheap, it's widely available. But just for like safety reasons, just to be on the safe side, just don't even pick up your phone. Silence it, turn it off even, throw it in your glove box, and just forget about it while you're driving, are his recommendations. And if you are a safe driver, when you do get behind the wheel, to drive safely and serve as a living example to everyone else on the road, we highly recommend going with the sponsor of this episode, Blue Car Rental, who are linked in the description below. One of the other things that Iceland is very famous for are the sagas. If you visited, you may have even picked up a translated copy of the sagas of the Icelanders and similar collections. They're really fascinating to read. Especially Njál's saga is It's very adventurous. There's a lot of betrayal and violence, and it's a very popular one. But there's a lot of manuscripts that detail a great many other things too, such as religious life and cultural practices. And a lot of those manuscripts were in Denmark, interestingly enough, but they're back in Iceland now. And now we have manuscripts that are going to be on display at Edda, which is the House of Icelandic Studies. It's up by the University of Iceland. There's an exhibition going on there right now. Well, it starts on Saturday, tomorrow at 2 o'clock Icelandic time, but it's going to be going on for a very long time, at the very least through Christmas, because there's more manuscripts coming in. And some of these manuscripts are 800 years old. And so they're handled very delicately. You know, you have to watch for humidity. You have to handle them with great care. In fact, manuscripts that were transported to this house, this building rather, received a police escort, which I thought was funny, because what will happen? You know, is somebody going to stage a heist and rob the manuscripts and then sell them on the black market? That would make for a really good movie. I'm not sure how great the danger is of that happening, but yeah, the manuscripts received a police escort, maybe just for show, you know, to showcase just how important these manuscripts are to Icelandic culture, because they are. And the exhibition that's going to be going on isn't just going to be a bunch of old books inside of glass boxes laid out. There's going to be a guided tour where it's going to be explained to you how these manuscripts were created, what is detailed within the pages, how important they were to Icelandic life. It's going to be really fascinating, and it's known as World in Words at the House of Icelandic Studies. Highly recommend checking it out. I'm going to be checking it out myself, because I've never actually seen these manuscripts like in real life. I've seen, of course, scans of them, but seeing them in the flesh, as it were, is probably going to be a lot of fun, and I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope you get a chance to check it out too. That's all we have for you today, this week on Iceland News Review. Be sure to check out Blue Car Rental, linked in the description below. I'll see you next week. Be good to each other.